What if you don't really totally understand what's going on with foreground and background media? Or you clicked on something and you expected it to go away when you clicked on the next slide and it didn't. Or the opposite, you clicked on something you expected it to continue on and it didn't when you clicked on the next slide. What's going on there? Well, stick around and I'll show you. Presented by Church Tech U, it's the ProPresenter show. On today's show, an updated view of the media foreground and background behaviors and what they're all about. Hi and welcome again to the ProPresenter show. This is the show where I teach you all about ProPresenter. My name's Paul Allen Clifford. And if you've ever been confused by the terminology of foreground versus background behavior, etc., it's totally cool. I was for a long time. I thought they were totally separate layers. That's a hint. They're not. So tell me about it below and we'll go from there. This is one of those things that a lot of people are really confused about. And I understand that because you've got to kind of think differently in order to understand what's going on. So let me start with the instances where you would use a foreground piece of media versus a background piece of media. The way I think about it is a foreground piece of media that is like a slide, but it's media. So what I mean by media is it's either an image or a video, but it's like a slide in that it is the entire point of that slide. So you click on it, it puts it up full screen, and the idea is that everyone's going to pay attention to that. A background piece of media augments what words, etc., are going over top of it, but it's more incidental to it. So, for example, I've talked about this in some of my live ProPresenter classes. Let's imagine that you had nature footage that went behind your worship songs. Does it matter all that much if it's the Colorado River or if it's the Mississippi River? Probably not. Imagine that it's Christmas time and you put up something that looks Christmassy. You know, maybe it kind of looks like a Christmas card. Would it matter all that much if you switched to a different Christmas card as long as it kind of had something to do with it? Well, no. Backgrounds are persistent until they're replaced or removed, so you put it on the first slide and it just continues on. Foregrounds, on the other hand, as I say, they're the entire point. So if your pastor says, hey, I mean, it's, as I'm recording this, it's early in the summer, late in the spring, so this is still a ways away, but I have a feeling that December's probably going to come around again. So imagine that your pastor says, hey, we want to play a clip of the nativity story. What if instead you play a clip of A Christmas Story? They've got similar names, aren't they? No, they're not similar in any way. A nativity story, the nativity story rather, is all about the birth of Jesus. A Christmas Story is about a kid in the 1940s wanting a BB gun. Totally different, even though they've got similar names. So that's kind of how I think about them. Is it the entire point of a person's attention, or is it incidental? If it's the entire point, then it should be foreground. If it's incidental, then maybe it's a background. If it should be up only while it's selected, it should be a foreground. If it should doesn't have the best internet, but you want to live stream, you could live stream at 720p while it separates it from some of the other competitors. But you might be here. Continue on to subsequent slides, it should be a background. So let me actually hop over into ProPresenter, and I'm going to show this to you in action. So if we select this announcements right here, now all of these are foreground, and the reason that that matters is if I click on this, and actually I'm going to turn that off here, so I'm going to turn off this advance here. Okay, because I didn't want that to advance automatically because I've got some music here. Anyway, so if this is a foreground and this is a foreground, notice when I click on any other slide, it goes away because it acts kind of like a slide does. Now, exact same piece of media. I'm going to right click on it, go down to edit, the name of it, and select behavior and change that to background. Exact same slide, exact same piece of media. I just changed the behavior, and when I did that, I click on the exact same one again, click on another blank slide, and it's still there. So that's part of it. Backgrounds are persistent, foregrounds are not. So where this really matters is in a situation like this. Let's say that we're going through the announcement slides and I haven't paid attention to foreground versus background. So this one is fine, this one is not. If the last slide that's up before we start church is this one and it's a foreground and I don't have anything else to replace it, when I get down to, let's say, the scripture reading, notice it continues on. But if the very last slide that was up is this one, which is a foreground, and I go down here and I select the exact same scripture, notice it goes away automatically. So this actually happened to me. Well, not me, because I was directing. I was next to the ProPresenter operator. And I'd come in and I hadn't made the presentations, but I noticed this. And the mistake I made was I didn't fix it because I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I didn't want to come in and be like, I am the ProPresenter guy. I know all about ProPresenter. You have done it wrong. You are not very smart. I didn't want to do that. So I didn't say anything, and I should have. Now, I could have said it in a better way than I just did. I did that for comedic effect. What I could say is, hey, is it okay if I change these that are set to background to foreground so that they don't automatically carry over? Because what actually happened is we had two services. First service, the ProPresenter operator who didn't know all that much about ProPresenter, he was one of the people that just knew, hey, I click the space bar, I click the right arrow key, the mouse, whatever. I use that, and that's all I need to know. Well, first service, the very last slide was a foreground. Last slide in the announcement loop was a foreground. So he clicked on the first slide of the song, which didn't have a background, and everything went perfect. Second service, he does, from his perspective, exactly the same thing. Only the very last slide that was up was a background. It was just a still image, just like I just showed you, but it was set to the background behavior. And since it was set to that behavior, it was persistent. So last slide is up, countdown goes down, we start the first song, and whatever the announcement slide was, I think it was like Trunk or Treat or something, that was up while the lyrics were. Now I knew immediately what happened, so I just said, hey, move the mouse over, click the little line drawing icon on the right hand side, told him to click this, he cleared it, and we moved on. But that's why it's important, because if you don't set the behavior right, it's not going to do what you want it to do. Now, they're both on the media layer. That's very important. So a foreground will replace a background, and a background will replace a foreground, because there's only one media layer. But it's important that you know the behavior, how they act. That's why it's called behavior. How they act is what separates one from the other. If you need a little bit more on that, I've made a cheat sheet for you. So head on over to tdm.fyi/pro-gifts, spelled GIFTS, and select the foreground versus background cheat sheet. Give me your name and email address and I'll send it to you for free. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford from TrinityDigitalMedia.com and ChurchTechU.com, reminding you to go out and change eternity.